Good morning and welcome to Jail Talk. Rob McAfee and Kylie Ekron along with you this morning, and we have another special guest to join us today. We'll get to him in just a minute. We want to welcome you in. We've had some great interviews this summer, and today will be no different. We have our special guest today is Nate Neff from Black Hawk County, Iowa Sheriff's Office. And Nate, we want to have you welcome you to the show, first of all. But I want to have you introduce yourself to the audience and tell them a little bit about yourself, what you do for the Sheriff's Office there in Black Hawk County, and kind of the story of your career.
All right. Well, first off, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. So as Rob said, my name is Nate Neff. I'm a captain with the Black Hawk County Sheriff's Office, and I'm currently our jail administrator. Been running the jail for about 4.5 years now, and I'm actually running for sheriff right now as well. So
yeah. So 4.5 years. What before you were the jail administrator? How long were you with the office?
Well, next month will be my 30-year mark with the office.
Right. Wow,
so
that's awesome.
That's
very good.
Yes. So it's crazy. It seems like a long time, but it's been one of the things I love about working in the sheriff's office is it's actually been broken into a few different careers for me is kind of how I look at it. So when I was hired, I worked at the jail as a deputy for about 10 or 11 years. Okay. And then I went to the road and worked patrol for a few years and then got promoted to sergeant and stayed on patrol. And so did that for about another 10 years. And then I made the lieutenant. So then I kind of became administration between that and captain for the last 10 years. So I've really kind of had 3 different 10-year careers is how I look at it so far.
Well, that keeps it a little bit more interesting for you, but it also lets you become that well-rounded candidate for sheriff. And that's kind of what led you to this point, right? You feel like you know a little bit about the office, certainly about the community. Is that kind of what drew you to run for sheriff?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Our current sheriff's been there for 16 years. He and I actually started about the same time, and he's stepping down. He's retiring. He's done a great job, so I wouldn't be running against him. But with Tony leaving, I felt it was time for me to take my experience and then education on top of that. Over the years, I've got BA in criminology and sociology. I've got my master's in public safety. And I've had the opportunity to attend a lot of great training throughout my time at the sheriff's office too. So I think taking that all, lumping that together, it's kind of all been preparing me for this next step.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting thing. I think, obviously a 30-year career with the sheriff's office, you've had that stability. You've had that way to progress through the levels and the different departments in the sheriff's office. But then running for election creates a whole different list of job concerns, right? Because you're not moving into a job that you're assigned to for the next 10 years. This is an election. So in 4 years, you got to do it again. And so does that create any extra pressure for you, or is something you're relishing the challenge and looking forward to?
I'm definitely looking forward to the challenge of it. Fortunately, I'm in a good spot because I'm at retirement age and our IPERS is based off our high 3. So after one term, if something would go wrong, someone steps in and takes me out, whether there's health concerns, whether there's anything. I'm actually coming into it, for me, at an ideal spot because my goal is to do at least 2 terms. I don't want to just be a one and done and be out of there. That seems a little disingenuous to the public. But if something were to happen, like I said, after 4 years, I could be out of a job. But, if I were 30 years old, I would be looking for another job. But at this point, I will just kind of ride off into the sunset and call it a career at that point.
Tip your cap and say thanks. But I think it's always such a really, obviously you're in the role right now where you're serving the public. You're in a law enforcement role. And I just think it is a natural progression for those that really step into that field and say, okay, I'm going to be a public servant. And then it's just the ultimate progression to that, right? To get elected as an elected official is another step up the ladder of public servant.
It is. It's definitely a whole new realm for me. I've never really been one that's much into politics. I haven't ever followed much on that. And so to actually consider myself a politician now, that's kind of weird for me, and be going to these meetings and doing fundraising and holding events and that kind of stuff. That's nothing that's really ever been part of my life. Doing the parades, all of that kind of stuff is definitely, it's a new realm for me. It's been interesting. I can't say it's been my favorite part of it. I'm looking forward to having the job, but obviously this part of it isn't necessarily me. The 2 things I'm supposed to be spending this summer doing are self-promotion and asking for money. 2 things I hate most in my life. are self-promotion
Yes.
and asking for
Yes.
money.
Yeah, and if I know anything about Nate, he is the most humble guy. So I'm sure
Yeah.
that's very much out of your realm. How has this been affecting your family, and how have they felt about you running for sheriff?
My wife and daughter are both very supportive. I've got a younger son who obviously is kind of impervious to what's
Yeah.
going on with that. It's just more work stuff to him. But my wife and daughter have been amazingly supportive. They've been out hitting the parades with me and doing all of that stuff. My wife knows that as a jail administrator, I work half the time 50, 60 hours a week anyway. So just
Yeah.
throwing this in is nothing really new for her.
Yeah.
Um, she actually just her parents live in Florida, so this month she took our younger son and she went down to Florida and is spending a few weeks with them just to let me almost every night I'm out either at
Yeah.
meetings or putting signs out or doing something. And I told her, you don't have to do that. You don't have to go away. And she said, you're going to be doing that stuff. You're going to feel guilty that you're leaving us. So this way we'll just leave and you don't have to feel guilty. And I mean, they're sitting at her parents' pool every day, so she's really not sacrificing too terribly much.
I was talking to some folks down in Florida yesterday. I'm not sure she's got the better end of the deal there. It's hot in Florida.
They seem to be doing okay anytime we FaceTime.
Yeah, good. So talk a little bit about kind of, I know you want the job, you mentioned that, but kind of like, that means you probably got some ideas. And one of the things we always like to talk about with our guests on here is, it doesn't have to be specific to jails, but that's kind of where I want to take you is like, tell us kind of about your thoughts. What's the future of your jail in Black Hawk County look like? What is the future of jails in Iowa and maybe nationally? Maybe you have some opinions, like where are you headed and kind of want to hear some of your outlooks for that department.
Fortunately, over the last few years, the sheriff's pretty well given me free reign to kind of do what I want with the jail. And I've made a lot of changes. Some of the bigger things I'm most proud of is we've gotten a full-time social worker hired that works directly under me in the jail. She's done an amazing job with a lot of programming. We have a local community college in town, Hawkeye Community College. She's got things set up with them where they actually get registered for classes before they leave the jail. And then there's grants actually set up that will apply or cover their transportation to and from the college. So, it's one thing to hand somebody an application and tell them on their way out the door that, hey, you should go apply here. But it's another thing when we actually have them registered for classes. When they leave, they've got classes set up, they've got transportation arrived, and we've got that going. There's another company called Iowa Workforce Development that we've been able to partner with, where we get people actually set up on job training. As they get out the door, they go and they get transitioned basically into like an almost internship. And if they do well there, some of them have actually transitioned into $40,000, $50,000 a year jobs.
Wow, that's great.
In years past, obviously, getting out of jail, I think the employment environment right now helps. It used to be if you got out of jail, you were probably looking to go to a fast food place and flip burgers. But the fact that everybody's certain now, but now we've got these other connections, so we're setting a lot of people up for success getting out of jail. I always say my ultimate goal as jail administrator is to work myself out of a job. Obviously, that's unfortunately not going to happen.
Pretty stable environment.
The fewer people we can get coming back in, the better off we are.
Yeah.
So my goal is really just to kind of keep building on those programs. We've done some remodeling things in the jail. Like I said, I've really done a lot of changes as it is. So I don't have any, grand vision for even more changes. I want to keep building on those programs that we've already done. The other thing with us coming up is our top 15 people in the department are all eligible for retirement.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So that's almost the entire command structure and our most senior deputies. So there's inherently just going to be a lot of change as there is. So I don't think coming in right now is the time for me to try and implement a whole lot of change, because we're going to have people learning new positions, learning new jobs, learning how to be an administrator, that are people that are maybe not even a sergeant right now, depending on who's willing to take promotions and stuff. So we're going to be facing a lot of changes and a lot of challenges coming in, which is kind of scary for me, but it's also kind of exciting too.
Well, sure, you kind of get to mold that office into your image as well. And I think that brings up a whole, obviously talking about, strategic planning and future building and stuff like that. But talking about staffing, you bring that up. You've got, I think it's pretty typical really in the industry where you've got, that retirement age group, and then you've got that green right out of the academy group. And so
not much in between.
There's not a lot of in between. And so do you have any insights you can share with us, like how you're planning for that? Like, do you have people identified? Are you gonna draw from outside resources, or is it all of that together and you're just putting it all in a melting pot, trying to make the best? You know,
Yeah, we've definitely got some good in-house options for those positions, and I mean, when I say we don't have much in that middle range, I mean we don't have much in that 10 to 20 year
right?
range, but there's still a lot of people with 5, 6, 7,
Yeah,
8 years in that, as you've been in for 30 years, you look back and think they're still
sure.
new, but in reality, I
Yes.
mean, 5,
That's
6,
right.
7 years, that's
That's
still a
right.
lot of experience. That's
Yep.
still, we can't let ourselves kind of be, jaded and biased by the fact that I'm old and have 3 decades in there. So there's still plenty of talent there. It's one in Iowa. I know it's not very often outside people come in, maybe as a chief deputy or something. I know in a lot of other states, and last year I had the amazing experience of going to the National Academy where I was with
Sure.
people from almost every state in the country, and they talk regularly about bringing people in from other agencies from other states to do stuff. That's just not something that really happens here. And boy, to try and do it, I think I would just cause myself a lot of
Sure.
animosity coming in. It would have to be someone pretty special or pretty qualified that I could definitely sell that
Yeah.
this person, we need this person.
Yeah.
So
So you're leading us right into these great questions. Kylie and I had talked a little bit beforehand. You mentioned the National Academy. That's the FBI Academy, and I know my jail commander did
yep.
that back when I was in Lincoln County, Oregon. And so, talk a little bit about that experience for yourself and kind of how it's helped you, how it's challenged you, and how it's kind of maybe changed some of your thought processes as you approach your new role potentially.
Yeah, that was an amazing experience. So, for people that don't know, it's about 1% of law enforcement from the world get to attend this. They have 4 classes a year that usually have around 250 people in it. Mine had, I think, 247, but we had people from 47 of the states and 24 different countries
Oh
come.
wow.
And it's, people think it's this top secret training, whatever. It's really more like college. Like
Yeah,
a month or so before you go, you jump online and you register for classes just like you would, if you were going to college stuff. So you take whatever areas that interest you, but to be surrounded by some of the best cops from around the world is just, I mean, it was humbling. So my roommate was from a self-described small agency in New York, Yonkers,
oh, not
600
yeah,
plus
not
officers in
small.
that small agency. No,
Yes.
it's just, there were guys in my class that were responded to
Oh
9/11. There
Oh
wow.
were
wow.
guys in there. One guy had been in the shootout with the Boston Marathon
Okay.
bomber when he was hiding in the boat there.
Wow.
The first officer from the Sandy Hook school shooting was
Wow.
there and did a presentation. I mean, just the amount of experiences that they were around was just humbling. I mean, to talk to all those men and women that had done all those great accomplishments was pretty amazing. But it was also interesting to talk that staffing issues with, whether it's lawsuits or new officers doing this or that. It didn't matter if you were from LAPD, NYPD, or, Blackhawk County, Iowa. The issues are the
Sure.
same all the way around. Um,
Yeah. So I got to ask because I know Lieutenant Russell, my former lieutenant, is she she had the blue brick and the yellow brick. Any bricks in your office?
I've got 4 of them in my
Four,
Nice.
office.
That's what I
dang.
wondered.
What bricks do you have and what are
Yeah.
for somebody that
So
doesn't
the
know, like what are the significance of all the bricks?
So the yellow brick is the official brick that you get. That for throughout the 10 weeks, everyone has to do, in addition to your classes you register for, there's a physical training class, so PT. There's a challenge every week that you have to pass that for PT, and then you have to qualify with a sub 10-minute mile run at the end to go on this yellow brick road. It's actually on the Marine Corps base. It's a 6-ish mile run. The first half has all sorts of obstacles that you climb over, climb down, jump through, whatever. And then the last half's basically just a 5K run. And if you actually watch the movie Silence of the Lambs at the
Yeah.
beginning when Jodie Foster's out running, she is on the yellow brick road, and that's pretty all the hallways, everything that she's in. That's where the National Academy was. So it was
Oh
kind of
wow.
cool.
Yeah.
We're walking the same hallways that she was in during that movie. But so upon completing that, you get a yellow brick which I'm at home now, not in my
Right.
office. Otherwise, I'd grab it. But yeah, and so it's the officially sanctioned one that upon completion you get to your yellow brick road. And the cool thing for me on that was one of my classmates was sick and couldn't run it. So he got to go back during the next session and do it, and he got to bring 4 of us with. So I actually got to go back 3 months later and run the yellow brick road
Oh, there
again.
you
So
go.
I've actually got to do
Oh,
it
that's
Good.
twice.
awesome.
So that was pretty cool. But then the other bricks are ones that the class just comes up with themselves. Like there's ones that you do on your own. The rowing, I think the red rowing machine was for the red brick. It's 34 miles from Quantico to Washington, D.C. So over the course of the 10 weeks, if you went in the gym on your own and rowed 34 miles, you would earn that
Very
brick.
good.
So I got that one. If you ran 50 miles on your own outside of class and everything, I think that was the white brick or the black brick,
Okay.
whichever one it was. So I got that one. And then there was the traveler one, which was on your weekends if you had to hit, it was Baltimore, New York, Philly,
Okay.
Gatlinburg,
Nice.
several different cities. So then you got the tourist brick,
Okay.
we called it.
Oh,
So
that's
Very
cool that
good.
you guys get to
so
pick
that
what
was,
like you want the bricks to be too, and that you got all of those ones. That's awesome.
yeah, but those we had to paint the bricks ourselves. We had to pay for them. I mean, but
Sure.
it's kind of a tradition there
Yeah.
that you do. And then there were other ones I didn't get. There was some that if you tried 20 different kinds of wood, there was a cigar brick, there was a swimming one,
Right.
there was all sorts of
Yeah.
others.
That's
That's
awesome.
awesome.
But yeah, so I got my 4 bricks proudly displayed in my
That's great.
office. But the yellow brick is the
Sure.
official exchange
Yeah.
one, yes.
Very cool.
That's awesome. So, just a little bit more, kind of like your experience in the jail. You started in the jail. You've been in the jail for several years now. What do you think has been the biggest difference for you from the outset of your career back in the 90s until now?
There's been
Yeah,
a
see,
lot of
there you
things.
go.
It's definitely a different profession than when I came in. I think a big part of it is, I mean, obviously there's cameras everywhere. It used to be a lot of he said, she
Yep.
said things. When I started, we probably had, I don't know, maybe 24 cameras in our jail, somewhere in there. We have over 300
Mm-hmm.
now. And sometimes the officers think, it's, not a good thing because you can get watched everywhere,
Sure.
but 99.9% of the time, those cameras prove that we're doing exactly what we need to be doing, and it justifies what we've done and why we've done it. So I think the fact that that's there, but just the second guessing, I think, from a lot of whether it's community groups or just the lack of accountability from the people themselves, we get, I think, so many more complaints and stuff on things questioning, why'd you do this? Why'd you do this? Couldn't you have done this? But when you go back and watch the cameras, it almost
Sure.
always proves us right. And in hindsight, maybe there's something that could have been done better, but in that time for the officer to make that split-second decision, he or she did just fine in that. So I mean, between that and just the technology that's come around.
Yeah. Well, and I think when you talk about the technology and the cameras specifically and the way they affect the way the staff behaves, maybe the way that some of them operate. I know one of the big things for a jail administrator like yourself is mitigating that risk, right? So you got to mitigate that risk through technology, through trainings, through all those things that supplement the officer's tool belt, right? Talk about that and the importance of it.
Well, I mean, obviously, mitigating liability is probably the number one thing we do. One of the biggest things I've been happy, it was my number one priority when I took over the jail, was getting video visitation put in. We used to have the in-person visit. It was on the 3rd floor of our jail, through the phone, through the glass, so there's still no contact. But our master controllers had to spend, we would have 50, 60, 70 people a day coming in. They would have to put them on the elevator, run them up. When their 30 minutes is up, run them down. So our master controllers were spending a good majority of their day dealing with the public side of things, instead of watching the cameras and watching over our officers and the inmates. So number one priority was getting video visitation in. We do have some ones that still come into the office, but mostly it's done remotely. And so now that is probably 3/4 of master control's day now has been freed up to concentrate solely on our staff and on the inmates, obviously. So it's safer for both sides of things.
Yeah.
And now they've got, the inmates have got all those things too, which are just, they're good for them. They're good resources. They can study for their GED. They can keep better in contact with their family, but they're tools that our staff can use as well too, to be like, well, if you're misbehaving, those things can go away. So, so some people look at those things as being, catering to the inmates, giving them all these things, but the reality is that there's still tools on our side.
Sure. Well, and I think that, video visitation outside of my role today, I think it's one of the best things that ever happened to jails. I'm sure you probably echo that since you have your staff free to do other things. I think the training side of it too, I think is really grown in the last, certainly in the last 20 years since I've been around the industry. So if could you speak to kind of the training that you guys do? I know you have that, like you were saying, maybe some people that are, more on the earlier side of their career, not newbies, but they're on the earlier side of their careers. Talk about the role training
Yeah.
plays in developing those people to be a promotable asset to the organization.
So our sheriff is very pro training. Obviously, when you get hired for the jail, you've got about, well, we call it a 6-week FTO period, but in addition to the DT, the training, everything, it's closer to a 2-month training period initially. And then we do 1 month of training per year. So like on our Wednesdays, nobody has the day off on Wednesday. So 1/3 of the department goes to training every Wednesday of every month. And then the fourth Wednesday is for like our SWAT drone specialty
Sure.
teams. So every month, you're getting training. Some of it's the mandatory stuff that you have to get, whether it's, your CPR, your bloodborne pathogens, that kind of stuff. But then otherwise, on the other months, we rotate in stuff. We're big on doing, CIT, which is crisis intervention training, mental health, first aid, trauma informed, a lot of that stuff. Or we'll just bring in outside speakers. Sometimes it's, legal stuff. Sometimes it's just kind of whatever we can draw on. But once a month, you're getting 8 hours of training. And it's funny because, well, I mean, you guys obviously go to the jail schools and stuff that we
Yeah.
go to. And I think what a lot of my staff doesn't realize is, because I'm on the committee that puts our jail school on, and it's a 20-hour training because that's the minimum requirement in Iowa. For so many counties in the state, that is the 20 hours of training
Sure.
they get
Mhm.
for the year.
Yeah.
And that's all they get. And, here we get, 96 hours
Yeah.
per year.
Mhm.
And sometimes our guys will complain that they don't get enough training, this,
Sure.
that. And it's like, I mean, I would love to give you even more,
Right.
but unfortunately with staffing and stuff, one day a month is a lot. And then Iowa also requires a 40-hour jail school within your first year of being hired. We actually do our own, and we do an 80-hour jail school. We're direct supervision jail, so that adds some components to it, but we touch on a lot of other things. So we're very big on training. And then through the course of the year, if anybody wants to put in for any other schools or if anything else comes along, we do our best to get people to any other trainings possible. So.
Well, and I think you mentioned the crisis intervention training and all the training that they're getting for everything involved. I think crisis intervention training in particular, when we talk to everybody around the country on the show, we are able to talk, and everybody brings up mental health and mental health issues in jails, of course, you talk mitigating risk, then it leads right into mental health, and then it leads in. So you talked about your social worker earlier. How do you guys deal with your mental health population? I know um, we've talked to jail counselors before, and they talk about, in reality, you say, yeah, there's 5 to 20% of the people in jail have an acute mental health issue, but probably if you talk about addiction and everything else being part of mental health, then you're talking 85-90% of the population. What do you guys do in Blackhawk County to deal with some of those mental health concerns, and what are your successes there?
So, obviously we try to find placement if we can get them out. We're actually pretty lucky. We have our own social worker, but then one of the state probation officers, she is actually also a licensed social worker. So she works under our office, and it's nice because she has a lot more pull with the courts, that if she can find placement, she can get somebody released on pretrial or something like that. So between the two of them, they do a great job of trying to find placement for people, getting them out of jail. If they're in jail, we've got medical 24/7, and we've got a psychiatric nurse practitioner on staff 40 hours a week. So we're able to work with them a lot. Some of it's hit and miss. Unfortunately, the state of Iowa usually comes in anywhere from 47th to 50th in the country in mental health care. So we become the de facto mental health facility. They get dumped on us, or police will take them to the ER, and then they'll assault a nurse or something, and then one way or another they seem to end up in our jail. We've got one female right now that we're kind of trying something new with. She's about a 10-year-old mentality at best. Instead of just putting her in her cell 23 hours a day, putting her on disciplinaries, we start each day with a new day for her. She comes out, sometimes she makes it all through first and second shift, sometimes she makes it into first shift. If she goes in, she goes back in for that day. But instead of holding that against her for a 30-day disciplinary or 10 days, whatever, tomorrow's a new day. We're just starting it back over with her. And sometimes that's where I know some of my staff get a little frustrated with it, but it's like they're working they spend a lot more time on her than
Sure.
do the other 40 people on that pod combined, and some of the other inmates get a little frustrated with her. Some are pretty good. They can be still motherly and realize that this girl's not right. This girl should not be in
Right.
jail, but unfortunately she is. So we have to deal with her. Um, and especially with the women, we just don't have many options. We only have one housing unit for
Sure.
women. With the men, we again do the best we can to accommodate them, but a lot of times, unfortunately, they end up in our special housing unit where they are in a cell 23 hours a day. They come out by themselves for an hour, and that's not good for someone's mental health. If
Sure.
you or I were to be locked in a room with nothing but our thoughts for
Yeah.
23
No.
hours
Yeah.
a day,
Yeah.
it's not healthy. But if it's not safe for them to be
Yeah.
anywhere else and we can't find any place else to take them, we just don't really have much choice, and it's unfortunate.
Well, and I think it's hard, that you have the tools, disseg, adseg, whatever you want to call it. And I think um, when you're looking at mental health, the example you brought up is perfect, because when you're looking at an individual like that, if you said you're on disseg for 10 days, you might as well tell that female in particular, you're on disseg for a million years. There's no time limit that makes sense to her. So every day has to be a new day.
No.
And so dealing with that kind of stuff, I think, is so huge for the staff. And that's kind of probably why when you're looking at staff too, then you're doing those psych evals now. They're everywhere in the industry. Nobody just hires a deputy because they say they want to be a cop. So looking at identifying the right people to work in the environment is huge.
Yep, that is. We've got a pretty extensive hiring process. We do the MMPI, as you mentioned, the psych eval. We do a polygraph. We do a pretty thorough background and stuff on it. And that's whether you're going for a civilian spot or for a sworn position. We're still hiring deputies in there too. So yeah, it's all about finding that right temperament. And again, some people are better than others, and it's different too. It's like, sometimes I'll get these people that are 35, 40 years old, and they'll come in thinking they're too old. And it's like, honestly, they're the group that I love. They've been out, they've actually worked somewhere for a living.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it's been factory work, construction work, whatever, to come in and, just kind of show up and do your job they're happy to do that. And we're happy to have them. It's, I get a lot of the college students, which are great. Some of them turn out great. I know they're not going to stay long-term. That's just kind of a fact. They're going to come in, finish college, get some experience for a resume, and go work at a PD or something somewhere, which is fine. But to get that stability, so like people talk about the turnover, my turnover on the 18 to 25, even 30-year-olds I hire is pretty high. But when I get those 30-plus-year-olds that come in and they appreciate, great job, great benefits, great retirement, and they just a little more life experience under their belt, they view things a little differently, and they understand that this 24-year-old girl that's acting like a 10-year-old isn't just acting. She legitimately hears voices 24/7. She sees things that we don't see, and she honestly believes that those things are there because to her they are. Generally our older people understand that a little better. So
very good.
It's a learning curve for everyone.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it doesn't still test your patience.
Yeah. So. Overall, how do you for staffing wise, how are you guys doing in hiring and everything? I follow you guys on Facebook, and so I see that you guys are always posting out there to try and get more people, but how is that all going for you guys?
We got down quite a bit during COVID, and we just have not been able to bounce back. Right now, I've actually got a bunch coming through. I've just hired 4 in the last couple of weeks, and we've got a bunch more between both the sworn and civilian side. I'm honestly feeling better about it now than I have in probably 4 years. So
that's good.
Which is good because with all the potential retirements coming up in the next year, I could be right back in the thick of it. But no, we're actually really sitting pretty good right now. And unfortunately, we're a big John Deere town, and they've been announcing layoffs by the hundreds. So we're seeing some of that. So it's unfortunate for the community. It's unfortunate for them. But on a somewhat selfish note, I think it is somewhat helping us because we're getting some of those people. But again, that's a lot of that work crew that I like. There's people that have worked somewhere for a while and they come in. So
good.
That's awesome. I wanted to touch before we get out of here. I know we've kept some of your time today, but a little bit about the community. We talked to a couple of sheriffs from several jail administrators from different communities. Talk about the support in the Black Hawk County community, maybe the city, that you guys are receiving, and how that goes what's the environment for law enforcement there?
We're pretty lucky, and I think really the vast majority of the state of Iowa is. obviously in the backlash of George Floyd and stuff, there was, some demonstration stuff, but nothing that got out of hand. And honestly, over the last few years when I'm out and about in uniform, I've had more people say, thank you for what you do. I appreciate what you do. We couldn't do what you do. Thanks for being there. Stay safe. All of that kind of stuff. I hear far more of that than I do the negative. I think, the national media, and honestly, really lately, I haven't even heard too much on that. But they tend to put a lot more negative spin on it than what we see. I think we're really pretty well supported in this community. And it's one thing I'm definitely thankful for. And it makes it a little easier to run for sheriff too.
Sure.
If we're a community where we were absolutely, despised and didn't have any support, it'd be a lot harder to want to step up and fill that role. But no, I feel good about it.
Very good. Kylie, anything else from you?
I don't think so. Anything else that you wanted to add or promote yourself for running for sheriff, or anything you wanted to throw in there?
No, I'm good. Obviously, Nate Neff for Bucket County Sheriff. My website and my Facebook page are out there. Feel free to check them out. But
awesome.
Well, we're going to be checking out the golf.
About as much self-promotion as I can do. Right
we are going to be checking out the golf course in Blackhawk County here in a few weeks, and so we're getting our shoulders.
We're getting
the backswing going, and so we're ready to compete for a title.
I haven't been out yet this year. I've got to go.
You got a good team?
We have a team.
Are we going to be lined up next to each other again? Because I still feel like I owe you a ball hitting your cart, because you did that to me a couple years ago.
That's
so,
right.
Well, I went in front of you guys last year, so you're back in front.
Great.
All right.
Rob's head's just like
that's it. That's right. It's shiny. So I'll paint a target on the back of it. That'll be a good one. Well, awesome. Nate, we really appreciate you.
Don't paint a flag on it, because I'll never hit it.
Yeah, right. Well, that's the best thing. They always say, aim for the tree, you'll never hit it, right?
Yeah.
So,
that's true.
Well, we really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you for joining us. It was really insightful and a lot of good topics covered. So we really appreciate your time and you being on with us.
I appreciate you having me. I've enjoyed the chat and always enjoy chatting with you guys anyway.
Yes, it's always so good getting to see you.
Yeah.
And for our viewers, as always, you can find us on YouTube and Spotify at JailTalk Podcast. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on YouTube and Instagram. And you can always find us at turnkeycorrections.com.
All right. For Nate, Captain Neff, and future sheriff, hopefully.
Yes.
And then for Kylie and myself, thanks for joining us on Jail Talk. We'll be back soon with another episode.